Hello, everybody. So this is a new face around here, so I figured I would start. So I'm a new face around here. I've been speaking with Vic for maybe 3 or 4 weeks off and on, and we decided it would be fun for me to come in and do a coaching session. I've been in the AI space for a long time in more of the corporate world, and then I've recently branched out into entrepreneurship and doing my own things. If I understand the audience a little bit here, it sounds like we're all on the same journey together in different ways and in different levels. I think this is a really cool space and community that I've seen so far in the time I've been involved. I'm excited to share some of the knowledge that I have today. I thought I would just start with just a couple intro slides about myself, just so you all can get to know me. I intend for this to be interactive, so feel free to jump in, ask questions, clarifications, or even share your own ideas on top of this. I don't have all the answers for sure, and I would love to hear from the group on different things. Okay. Let me get started. All right. Everybody, I'm assuming, can see everything. Okay, so this is me and my family. This is my wife and my two boys. Jacob's the littlest one. He's 6 months old now. And Jeremiah's the little short one that looks like a little tiger. This is me. I live in Florida. This is us in the Dominican Republic a couple of months ago, celebrating Jacob's first big trip. We just got done with the hibachi grill thing, so that's why I'm wearing the weird thing. I'm not injured or anything there. I'm from Indiana originally. I had a very big fear of water, being landlocked in Indiana my entire life. And then when I moved to Florida, this is one way that I overcame one of my biggest fears. So I just dove in. And so this is some of the brands I've worked for. As I mentioned in the beginning, I came from a corporate background. I was working in product management. I was mostly in e-commerce, as you could imagine, looking at these brands. I was just building digital experiences, leading teams, doing all kinds of different things, even leading some marketing channels. I've got a very vast knowledge and experience across a lot of different things. And most recently, I've left the corporate world, launched Spotify, which is my AI agency. So today, what we're going to talk about is how to vibe code AI workflows. So I saw there was a classroom session on vibe coding. And what I'm going to talk about today is something about 5 months ago I came across this concept of using the Claude projects to basically set up a wizard that can vibe code your workflows. And I've been having a lot of fun with it, but it's definitely something that's useful. You guys will probably find some value in this. Whether you're just starting out with this or you've been doing this for a long time, you will find value in this. Okay. So just yesterday, I don't know if you guys know this guy, but he posts a lot of N8N content and AI agency stuff. And he posted this video yesterday, and I was watching it, and I thought what he was talking about is really perfect for this coaching session that I'm doing today. Basically, he says instead of automation in 2026. Learning automation is one of the worst career moves right now. So I think 2 years ago, people getting into automation and AI and whatnot, like digging deep and really learning every little thing about it was probably the skill set that you needed. Not that this is a bad thing to learn. I really learn that and continue with this community, but as we move down the future, we get into 2026, 2027, you guys think about the way things are going, these models are going to be able to, for sure, build workflows for you. You just give it some requirements and it builds some workflows. He talks a lot about that in that video. I recommend it. It's a good 15-minute video. And I was happy to see that this is the direction he's thinking. He's a little bit forward thinking in certain ways, which I like. So this is what we're going to talk about today is how can we stay ahead of the curve in our automations that we're building, and what are some ways that we can speed up the process. Okay, so let's see. I may bounce around a little bit. Okay, so first off, we're going to jump into Claude, and I'm going to show you a lot of different examples that I personally had that I've done and against some of these use cases. But the use cases for what I'm going to talk about today, there's about 5 of them that you can use once we get this set up. And by the way, I'm going to give you guys the system for free. If you have to drop or whatever, don't worry about it. Vic said he'll post it, and you guys can download the workflows and everything. You guys can have all that. The first use case is creating workflows from scratch. So you'll see the way we have this set up. Once we get into the tool, it's pretty easily going to be able to create the JSON necessary to create a workflow. Another use case for what we're going to talk about is brainstorming new workflows. So I found myself instead of just building it, just brainstorming against how should I build this? How should I think about this? And it's been very helpful in helping me understand how to build it in a bigger picture. The third piece is troubleshooting existing workflows. So I found myself coming in and chatting with Claude about these workflows, and I might be having trouble with some code or something's failing and I'm just not sure where to go. And I've had some success looking into that. It's been very helpful with code notes. I'm a product manager by trade, so I have some technical skills, but I apply code mostly. And then lastly, you can use this tool to learn and jump into how to build this thing, basically.
Jimmy, you mentioned that Vic is going to share something. What will it actually be? Will it be prompts? Will it be JSON? Will it be a PowerPoint? What will it actually be?
I'll actually drop the link right now. So I'm going to provide you guys with 400 templates of workflows, so like all kinds of different things. And that's what we feed into Claude, and some tips and tricks and stuff that we load into the project of Claude. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Claude or if you're using a ChatGPT or whatnot, but you'll get all of those workflows and then my instructions on how to set it up, some tips and tricks and things. Pretty much what I covered here, a version of it. Right? Okay, so I'll show you the structure of how it's all set up. Let's go into Claude and let me show you how mine's set up, the kind of structure of everything. And then we will go into some of the use cases details. All right, screens, Claude, share. All right, basically what I've done here is I've created a project in Claude. So the first thing is what you need, the prerequisite is you need Claude and you need, I think you might need the Pro plan or something to do projects. So as I mentioned, I have a library of 400 plus templates for N8N. And what I've done is I've just loaded a whole bunch of different, we'll say random things that N8N can do, right? So this is AI powered information modeling with OpenAI, Google Sheets, Gina AI, and Slack, right? So what I've done is given it a ton of samples of things that it can draw from in its project memory, right? As we go through, I've got a couple cheat sheets for it, just different things that it needs to consider as it's creating these things, right? So it's just a whole bunch of different ways to set things up and some prompt engineering there for it. And then there's another tips and tricks. So it talks about what's the general N8N node JSON structure that it should create, all about chat trigger nodes, sticky notes, and things like that. So the basis of it. Whole bunch of different JSONs, and then you have the cheat sheet and the tips and tricks. The more powerful part is actually the instructions here, because this is what I found as I'm going through. Claude references these instructions very first before it goes and does anything, right? Here, it's like the instructions are reference all knowledge-based files. And by the way, this is all in the download, so you guys can just, you'll see all of this exact prompt here in here. You can just put 0, you don't have to buy it.
And then you enter your email address, and that's what's going to give you the link to download.
And then you'll have a landing page that'll have a download of all of the workflows in a zip file, and then you should see an instruction sheet that you can download. So you'll get two things. You get the instruction sheet and then the...
Great. And then the last quick question, I'll put myself back on mute. Are those workflows, those JSON workflows, did you source them from somewhere else? Did you write them from scratch? Are they proven? And if so, do you have any idea roughly what version of N8N they're proven against?
They are ones that I've sourced from a lot of different places, from the community itself. There was a batch that I got from somewhere I can't remember, and I have some people that are on my team that go and source a bunch of stuff. So use it at your own risk. What I'm going to preface right now, and I put this in the notes, is that this will, I've been using this and it does not get me to 100% accuracy of the workflow. And I want to make sure that's crystal clear to everybody. The goal here, especially if you've done any kind of coding at all, you know that typically your first prompt is not the only prompt. So that's how I would like you guys to think about this. That's where these instructions come in very handy, where you say, don't use XYZ node because it's deprecated. And so the point of uploading the workflows themselves is really just to give it like some thought starters and some examples to draw from when it's building it for you. Okay. So again, coming back to the instruction, this is reference all knowledge-based files. So that's the first instruction, reference all the files. Look for these two in particular. And then as we go down, the workflow starts with the chat trigger node that receives user messages. It flows into an AI agent node. One of the things that this does really well is Claude will output the sticky notes with the context and information, which is really helpful as you're building this out. It gives ideas like fallback models, different things. This can be anything you want. I've seen gives a decent output so far. I was using a deprecated node for an AI agent, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working, and I saw that. These are some things I've learned as I've been going on. So one of the things that I wanted it to do was like, before you output any JSON, first look in all the project files and see if there's something close. And if there's something close, recommend it to me first. And then I'll decide if I want to go that route. And I found that's helpful because you get the customer requirements and you document them out. And I'll show you how I structure that. The idea is that it will recognize it and recommend it first as a starting point. So that way you just have, it's almost like a template search database or something like that. This next one, oh yeah, this was something that was just annoying me. So what would happen is I would just ask general questions sometimes. Tell me about the structure of this JSON, or tell me what this JavaScript does or something. And then it would just go through all the project files and then it would try to spit out emojis. So I had to put a rule in there that just said, puts the brakes on that and just answers my questions. So that way it's more of a dialogue once we get going. So that's been pretty helpful. All right. I found once I put an instruction in there, it really changes the dynamic of how it works.
Yeah, I've had the same exact problems. So it's so nice to see that helpful hint. I got the same work setup. And I know that from Tori, who's suggesting maybe using RAG, I know that Claude allows for RAG to be automatically enabled. Once you upload a certain number of documents, you can keep uploading documents and it'll automatically enable RAG whenever needed. But I ran into the same problem too, like you did, which is when you're just asking a question, it automatically goes, it starts like writing new code. You're like, wait a second, I didn't need you to do that. But maybe now, or maybe before we hang up, if you could describe how you overcame the limitations on an individual conversation, and then how did you start a new conversation yet it knew about the previous one? I run into problems where I'm like writing, kind of iterating JSON, right? Making improvements, proving out a workflow, testing it, and saying, okay, we've established this, it's going to now the next improvement, we'll go through the improvement. And all of a sudden you've got a conversation that must reach the theoretical limit of what an individual, a single conversation can happen. You try and post, and all of a sudden Claude says, nope, you've reached the limit. You start a new conversation. It's almost as if it has no context of anything you've done previously. You can even tell it, go refer to this conversation. You can name them. You can want to name them, but you can also rename them. You can star them and things like that. But I'm not figuring out how to bring in the context of a previous conversation so that it knows where to pick up where you left off.
Okay, so I've got some idea around that, and if anyone else has any better ideas, let me know. But first off, I think that Claude just introduced the ability to reference past conversations.
I think it's happened 2 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago it happened.
Okay.
And now what I'm doing is I'm intentionally breaking off my conversation, saying I don't want to get to the point where I'm hitting the limit, because I might be right deep at a 5-foot level trying to solve a problem, and then have to like start all over again, providing initial context and things like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure the right answer to this, but the way that I would think about this is, and I've done this before, is I would just ask Claude in the current conversation to summarize the main points / give me the details and the last things that we talked about, and what is the context of this conversation, and then bring that context into the next one. So we talked about the structure of how it's all set up. And let's go through some of the use cases that I've had. Sometimes it's not successful, and sometimes it wows me. I'm like, wow, it's saving me a ton of time. It creates code sometimes, and it's great. Let's do creating workflows from scratch. We'll start with that first use case. So I got some requirements from someone. They didn't look like this at first. So basically, I used a prompt to make the requirements lay out like this, and I found out that the way that it laid this out was actually really helpful. But there was a CEO that had Quill meeting transcripts and just wanted it to output actionable action items from it, decisions. He wanted a daily CEO brief and different things like that. So I just dropped the requirements in here. The first thing it did was search the knowledge base, and it went through a bunch of different things in the actual knowledge base. I found actually your meeting next steps using transcript an AI workflow. It found something close to what he was looking at. This isn't that complicated one, so it's good. It wrote the JSON for it and summarized what it did and plugged in the tools that may have been missing, and then it messed up the JSON. So this is a bug or something that I need to work on. Sometimes it outputs invalid JSON. I don't know why. It will do something wrong. Like this one, it said operation complete as opposed to message model or something like that. So I needed to tweak it a little bit, and then it figures it out. So then I said, all right, we need to work on this a little bit, and we did some vibe coding with it. Eventually, we get to the point to where it gives me something usable, okay, down in here. Once it got to that point, I said, okay, let's see what it looks like, okay? So I disconnected all these tools because I don't have all of these tools to set it up, but you'll see what it has actually created. So I just pasted it in there, I disconnected this one, and I was really working in here because that's the main part of the output. So what it does is just a chat trigger. So I envisioned this being the input of the quill transcripts. So the chat trigger, and then it created this AI agent, and I didn't write any of this. So it just wrote all of this content inside here. Yeah, I didn't touch it. I just left it alone. And this was written by it as well. So it created this structured output parser. And I said, okay, let's test it. So I asked it, come up with a fictitious meeting transcript that might come from a Google Meet or Quill that would fit this. So while that's running, the process I got from that was probably, I don't know, I probably prompted it Claude for 25 minutes or something, 30 minutes. It really wasn't a lot of time that I spent getting to the point to where it built all of this. And as soon as this executes, we'll take a look at the output. What's going on here? Oh, I guess it had output, it just didn't show it. Okay, so this is the output. So you can see it created the summary. That was one of the requirements. If you caught that, if the CEO just wants a summary of the meeting. It captured some decisions here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, action items. So you can imagine from here, next steps for this one, it coded this thing here, which is going to take all of this, get it ready for these nodes, so on and so forth, setting it off, doing all of that. And then have to do to connect the dots here is just do the daily report that he wanted, which is an email brief for the CEO, so on and so forth. So that was that. Any questions about that?
Oh, it looks slick.
Yeah. Super helpful. Okay.
If you're willing to share, what are you charging them for that? More than $1, less than $1 million.
I don't know how much should I charge him for that. I haven't landed it yet. This is how, and by the way, if you guys are out there trying to get deals, this is my approach. I'll just tell you what I do is I build part of it as much as I can with this wizard, and then I go and show them a demo of what can be possible and get them excited. So I'm still working with it. It's not landed yet. So, how much should I charge for it?
To me, the old adage of sales is that you want to sell on value. Your prospect or your customer wants to buy on cost or cost plus, right?
Yeah.
So the value being what that widget creates for that company. It could triple sales, slash operations by 50%. So you want to sell it. You got to know what the value to the customer or prospect is going to be, because you can't just sell on cost, where you want to sell for $5, but without knowing what the value is to that. Ask the CEO, what would this take if someone had to manually do it? All these people taking all this information, transcribing it, drawing intelligence, inferences, setting out actions, set an arbitrary cost per hour for each of those people, add it all up, and then say, this is what it would cost. So I'm going to save you all of that. And therefore, I'm going to charge you 20% of the savings. I guarantee it'll be more than cost plus. I guarantee it.
Beautiful. All right. Let's keep moving. I got some more use cases to share. So the other one was requirements for a marketing system. So let's just go to the top of this one. This one, I had a little trouble with it, but at the end of the day, we got pretty good output. This is all I've started with, so we're looking for experience. So I just put a job description in there. overspending, underspending, output KPI range. The AI agent should generate a daily digest and set it in a clear, actionable format, Slack, email, dashboard, so on and so forth. So this was about creating a report that looked at marketing spend and budget and determined whether they were on a daily basis over or under right par. Started looking through the project files. I found an email summary agent, and then I coded some stuff. And then I said, all right, give me a CSV file, some sample data that matches the required format so that way I could test this. And here it gave me just some budget, spend, conversions, target CPA, actual CPA. So then I had all that. And then there was just, you need to fix this thing. There's a no code operation. So just like the other one, you end up having some back and forth, but you spend enough time on it, you will get pretty decent output. So at the end of the day, this was the workflow created. So what happens here is I created a form submission trigger, comes in, parses the CSV data, processes and categorizes it. So this is the part that I find very valuable, that using Claude to go and do this, because this was what kind of made it work. And it was giving me new versions, and the output ended up working eventually. So then we have the OpenAI call here. And then the prompt was something like, you're a marketing AI analyst, analyze all accounts and the provided data, always respond in valid JSON. Then I give the example of the JSON, and then I format the outputs. This is for the email. So this, remember, there was an email response that it wanted as an output. And then there's a Slack message as well that we can leverage. Here's my email format. And then it sends the message, and I have the example one I just did before the call here a few hours ago. There's a total of 30 accounts were analyzed. Shows the critical alerts. So this is like a high-level minimum viable product for somebody. You can always iterate on it from here. So those are two use cases of just starting from scratch, getting some requirements, dumping it into the Claude model, iterating on it, and then coming up with something that's at least 80, 90% done. Any questions before I move on to the next use case?
Possibilities, leverage, and speed. But you see that word at the beginning there? What is it? Infinite.
So these templates, everything you created and you put in project capacity, right? This repository, whatever you have as data, enhance security, this all means what the file, they will change or they will remain same?
So all the project files pretty much stay there. So one of the things that you could do is, as you find workflows or you create them yourselves, you can save them into the project if you think it would be valuable to the wizard in the future. So that would be a practice I would recommend, or if you come across some template that someone else has built, that would be better than something you have here. I think the right way to do, like the way I did this, I just dumped it in and didn't really pay any attention to it because I really wanted to see what Claude could do if I did that. And so I didn't spend a lot of time really understanding what I was dumping in there. I just said, oh, here's some HR ones. I have them categorized in my system, but here's some ones for HR, here's some ones for meetings, and some ones that were, I picked a few different workflows and then dropped them in. And that was my approach. But if you spend some time on this and really dug in on it, I think that you could really dial this in a lot more, probably get closer to 95%.
Apart from the actual live workflows, have you written anything which is prompt, which because you are just typing the high level business requirements and it is creating. So have you done in this project file, have you put any understanding of how to understand these workflows and create the prompts? Some other files also you have loaded in this, like apart from workflows. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the use cases that I talked about. You can chat with, you can say, hey, this daily meeting summarization one, whatever this one is, Gemini AI, tell me about that specific workflow. You can do that in this setup.
My query was the files are just the actual N8N flows, but you have given instructions only as a general prompt. You have written only instructions, and the others are just workflows. And based on that, whatever you are typing here, based on your business functionalities, it is understanding based on the instructions you have given and the workflow knowledge, and it is trying to interpret those. And based on that, it is creating the required JSON or workflow the more you load, the more knowledge it had.
So moving on. So this next part is about brainstorming new workflows. That was another use case I talked about. Sometimes I don't want the requirement, or I don't have the requirements. I'm just thinking about something and I need help brainstorming on it. I use Go High Level for my CRM. I have a whole bunch of contacts in Go High Level, and what I wanted to do was enrich those contacts, but not use the service and just build it myself, just to see what we could build from that. And some of those contacts I had in there, and I wanted to basically trigger something in Go High Level, then go out to N8N, enrich the information, and then send it back to Go High Level. And I was just thinking about, I don't know how to connect Go High Level to N8N. How might I do that? This is where I started brainstorming. So help me envision an automation that does the following: takes an input from Go High Level with some context about a prospect. It will be like personal information that has been researched about them. Then that would be pulled in from a field and processed by AI, who will be given instructions to process their personal information into one of 7 different email templates. Then, when done processing that personal info, it dumps it back to Go High Level as a draft email to the prospect waiting to be sent. So what it did was I created a workflow, but it did map it out afterwards, which was what I needed. So this is the mapping. All right, we'll start with a Go High Level trigger. So it starts there, and then it will come in on a webhook event. It'll extract the data, AI will process it, it'll create the draft, template engine, email assembly, Go High Level draft. So this ended up, I won't go through all the detail of the Go High Level part of it, but this was the way that I built this. It would have taken me so long to figure that out personally. Here's the work with, create a pretty simple one. But again, the part that was, I needed to figure out was the webhook, and then how can I structure all this. So here was my beginning webhook. I put a wait note in here after a specific, I had it randomized because I was getting too many records coming in at the same time, hitting OpenAI, and OpenAI was getting upset about that. So I randomized the output of it. And then, yeah, pretty much wrote most of this because it was just in what I was looking for from email templates. And then here's some fun things here that I did with it, just since you guys are all into this kind of stuff. I have the template, how I want the subject lines created, so on and so forth. And then down here, I put all of my specific information about myself, because if I found some connection with somebody, they're from Terre Haute, Indiana, that's where I was born. If anyone's from Terre Haute, Indiana, and they're a prospect, they might get a really personal connection there with me. So that was fun to put in here. This is why I preferred to put it as opposed to using Go High Levels. But anyways, then it created the structured output that I needed, which is just the output of the subject line, and it sent it back to Go High Level. And that was that. So then Go High Level processes it, and that's it. Sanjay, you have a question?
So I was just wondering, so after it generated through your prompt and the JSON, you are updating all these things manually with the mat function and other stuff. You have done anything manual, or automatically those also are generated? Because it just create the structure in, and later you have to put the prompt inside that OpenAI and all other stuff like email format, all those stuff, or it will by default generate that also.
Yeah, so the way I approached it was, if you look at the simplicity of the original prompt, I didn't really give it much information to start with here. Most of the AI agent stuff is stuff that I wrote myself. If you prompt a little more detail in the beginning and say, hey, to include X, Y, Z, and whatever you think, otherwise it'll wing it and try to get it as close as it thinks it needs to make it work. But I think this one's all written by me, and then I did the more personal stuff.
What I thought, like in your workflows, if already it had been the prompt, if you just suggest in the prompt saying that take that from the template or something, it by default take that, and we have minimal change. That also can be done. Or that we have to see specific to our workflow, we need to edit.
Maybe I'm not understanding your question, but the way I'd answer it is, the more specific you are in your prompting in the wizard here, and if you give it explicit instructions to prompt in this way when you build the workflow, and you give it the prompt, then you'll probably get that output when it builds the JSON here. If you're not specific, it'll probably just try to guess and get as close as what it thinks your requirements are. Did that answer?
Yeah, that answers actually. So basically prompting, meta prompting, proper prompting if we have, then we can try our level to get that and we can keep that prompt for future workflows. Or something.
Yeah. So sometimes my prompting I find is just lazy. If I really spent time and prompted properly, I'm sure I get a great output. But I almost want, like, I don't learn unless I see how it's going to output in such a way that is its natural kind of way. I like to be lazy sometimes with prompting, especially when I'm building something. Thinking about other people using it, they may also be lazy prompting it.
But this is the good chain of thought, right? Like means once you come one step and see how it goes, if you know the categories and if you prompt that, then reusable. Because if this chart memory window freezes out, you need to end up again writing all that whatever you have written for the prompt. If you want to again go ahead, right? Unless and until you have a big buffer in the chat, you end up creating all that instructions again, right? Okay, thank you.
Another use case. There are other use cases, but I think that I've covered some of them. Like the other one was helping with the code nodes in N8N. You could see, I think in this marketing example, there was some really good code that it wrote here to output what I needed. So the other use case is around troubleshooting. So let's say you didn't use this workflow wizard or whatever to create it in the first place, and you have a workflow already, or you're trying to build it from scratch or whatever, and you want to troubleshoot it. This is pretty good for that. This situation here, where I just went to my wizard and I said, I'm getting this error, what the heck's going on? I couldn't figure it out. It looks through the knowledge base and says, what can I see that might be similar to this? It goes through its motions and comes up with some suggestions on what I should do. I don't remember if this is a solution or not, but I wanted to show you that this is one approach that you can use this tool, is just troubleshooting. So just drop it in there, tell them what the problem is.
One tip, if useful, is when you run N8N, oftentimes you can click on the node and then N8N's built-in AI assistant, you can click a button and it will go ahead and analyze the error. And then you can copy that and paste it back into Claude and say, and it's telling me exactly this. And it says, oh, yep, I found the problem, and instantly starts writing the fix to it. That'd be one thing I'd suggest you do, because then that way you're not burning.
Okay, so I'll just end with a couple things. The first one is, let me share my screen properly. Stop sharing. I want to just give some lessons I've learned. I think I've talked about some of these throughout, but let me just make sure I cover everything here. A second. All right, so these, I've been using this for about 5 months since I set it up. Some of these JSON files, I believe, have some deprecated nodes in them. Instead of going through and trying to figure out every single one, what I recommend, if you want to be lazy like me, is consider maintaining a list of deprecated nodes to reference. One of the things I wanted to figure out, is there a resource somewhere that shows a list of deprecated nodes? That would be cool to just give a file of don't use these if you see them and use these instead or something into the project. What this means is if there's a specific node generating JSON is incorrect or it uses the wrong parameters, you can ask Claude to output only that single node with the necessary corrections. So what I found is helpful is if you're not very specific with your question about the specific nodes, the AI node, be very specific and say, please only output the JSON for that one. If you don't do that, it'll try to rewrite the whole thing. It'll just save you a little time. If you're just iterating on one of the nodes trying to figure it out, you can grab the JSON, paste it in, and you're good to go. If the generated JSON becomes invalid, ask Claude to review its JSON structure. So that's, I run into this a lot. I don't know why, but there's something about its initial generation that sometimes has some kind of syntax error or something. And I ask it to address that. Vibe coding is an iterative process. You're iterating on something, it's creating something for you. I wouldn't expect 100% accuracy on the first attempt. If anyone uses this and gets it 100%, I would love to hear about that. I have not nailed that yet, but I've nailed 80%, 90%, and it will save you time. It will save you money. It will help you out, I think. Just embrace that and don't expect perfection. But that is what I had planned for today. Any questions or anything you guys want, let me know.
I've got a quick question, if I could. One of the things I've been trying to figure out is, like you said, if you could isolate the problem to one specific node, if there's a way to ask Claude just to rewrite that one node instead of writing the whole thing again and then having to download the whole JSON and upload it to a brand new workflow or replace the whole existing one. I haven't figured out a way where you can expose You can see the visual workflow in N8N where you can see all the nodes kind of drag and dropped and connected. But is there a way to just see the raw JSON for an individual node so that you could potentially copy out of Claude and paste it over? If you look at JSON structure, it's highly structured. So you could go down into the body of the JSON, the belly of the JSON, to find that node. And if there's just a way you could just copy that node and expose the existing workflow that you're tweaking to find that, it's almost like think of a WYSIWYG web page editor versus looking at the HTML. If you could just switch to it, paste in the edited code, and then go back to the visual and save it or run it. I'm not aware of anything like that.
This is a Quill workflow node, a trigger node JSON. And let's just see, because then you can probably just iterate on that. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. So Claude is going to give you the fixed code, right? They're going to say, this is exactly the part of the JSON that you need. So you copy it. Let's just say that you blind faith, you think it's going to work, but you copy that. But how do you go take that JSON? You can't just paste it as raw JSON into the visual editor, right?
Why not?
So if you paste it, does it paste a node? What does it do?
Sometimes it does, but it hasn't output it properly.
This is one of the things where, again, because it's like writing out hundreds of lines of workflow, and you're like, wow.
It did it. So
that's brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, see, that's what I meant by iterating on a specific node. Right. And also, I don't know who joined when, but this system, you can download it for free.
Connecting Claude Desktop to your N8N instance. And then you can even control your workflows from within Claude. Like you can even say, show me all my workflows in N8N. And you can even say, run this one. You can launch it directly from within Claude. So it almost makes like the Claude application on your desktop, your air traffic controller, and then your workflows that are in N8N, or even locally, get controlled by the desktop application. You have to just set up an MCP server. It's very simple to do.
This link you're given is asking to enter some amount and then download, right? How that works?
Yeah, you can put 0 if you want to. It's for free, so you don't have to. Okay, guys, I think we're going to wrap the call. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for everyone's time and attention to this. You guys are great. Have a good one. Have a good weekend.